And that's another thing as producers, it's always amazing when you talk to named people, there's this thought that you might never get somebody that is recognizable, but all you have to do is ask.
This is Global VID, a podcast about the TV and streaming business with host Eric Lapointe. If you enjoy learning with us, subscribe here or on your favorite app. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Global VID. We are now well into the middle of season 3, and I'm really happy to be joined today by two producers that I met at MIPCOM that are fresh producers who just started with their very first television concept called Phoenix. And we're going to have a great conversation with them because normally what I do on this podcast is we take, oftentimes we ask about people's backgrounds and how they got started, but how they got started is super fresh. So you're going to learn from brand new producers. You're going to learn what they did right. And you're also going to learn what they've learned and how perhaps to avoid some of those early mistakes. So Laurine Price and Kelly Faltis, how are you?
We're great. Thank you so much for having us, Eric.
Yes, thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourselves individually just before we kick off this story about your journey with the Phoenix TV series?
Hello there. My name is Laurine Price. I am an actress, creator, and producer. And I actually, full disclosure, started off in business and IT management. And after getting that degree, I would moonlight in musical theater at night. And that's my first passion, was musical theater. From musical theater, met people and got into commercials, industrials. Skip ahead, I'm working in Europe with my corporation, and I just decided to go for it and audition for the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. Got in and said, let's do it. Take the leap, quit my job, went to Lambda, got my MA in classical acting. And from there, as an American, you either move to Los Angeles or New York. Los Angeles had the better weather. Mm-hmm. Here I am in LA. And then LA is a film town. There's a little bit of theater, but it's mainly film and TV. So to really understand the set, I stood in as a stand-in for a lot of different Asian American actresses in town. And I really got to learn how a set worked just by standing in. And I recommend to any actor or creative that moves here, if you have a chance to stand in, do, because you really learn those inner workings. While I was watching the way a set works, as a creator, I started to get ideas on writing. And at night, I would go home and just start writing my stories based on, being inspired by what I was seeing on set that day. And then meeting people, these stories became scripts, started pitching the scripts. A little while later, a wonderful director, writer, editor came to me with something called Phoenix and said, hey, take a read of this. I read the pilot and thought, this is amazing. Asked, could I take it to an actress friend of mine? With his permission. Her name is Kathleen Kinmont. And he said, oh my gosh, Kathleen Kinmont from Halloween 4. Yes, please do. She said, I love it. Let's do it. But that's the general nutshell.
Great. And Kelly, how are you? And please introduce yourself.
Hi, Eric. Happy to be here. I'm Kelly Faltis. I'm a producer, production manager, creator, writer. And I had no idea that I would be doing this growing up. I had a windy path to find film and TV production. Some of that included a mother-daughter bakery cafe for 5 years in Tahoe. I went back to school after that and studied public policy, which brought me to Southern California. And maybe it's just being around people who produce films. I'm not sure, but I ended up taking a couple classes, ended up loving film, taking all their classes, changing directions. And here we are. I met a lot of wonderful friends and contacts there. And actually it led to me finding Laurine and Phoenix, the project that you know us from. So
now let's talk about how you guys came together, which is essentially is the starting of the making of story of Phoenix. And I think this is where it gets really interesting on that end, because the next topic we're going to talk about this is what you guys learned from all this. But let's start with the making of.
Prior to COVID-19, right before in 2019, when the writer-director Brian Lambert brought the script to me of the pilot read it, loved it, shared it with Kathleen Kinmont, great actress. She's a producer as well. And she's like, I know the cinematographer you should use. The cinematographer's name is John Pope. He is now Emmy nominated and has won a collective Emmy for The Social Dilemma. But she's like, I know this great cinematographer. And she said, if you use my favorite cinematographer, my father, her dad named Jack, will give you a brilliant location, which is his house on the hill in Hollywood. So we're not going to say no to that. We filmed the pilot with a lot of favors from friends, to be quite honest. A location, phenomenal cinematographer who did indeed charge us, but he understood. He'd worked with Kathleen before, so he brought a skeleton crew. His gaffer had a really, great but sparse lighting kit. And actually, the original thought of Brian was to maybe make this a short film. And he thought, well, maybe a short film, and it'll end on this amazing moment where, spoiler, she gets out of this horrible situation, but we don't know what's going to happen to her next. So anything can come of this short film. But then Kathleen said, I really think you have a series here. I think you should think about a series, being that she's a producer. So the pilot was made, and actually the original thought was to make it for Quibi, because in 2019, Quibi was all the rage. Everyone was talking about Quibi's coming, a short form, 10 minutes or less. This is where everyone's going to want to be. You're going to want to be on your phone watching Quibi. That's going to be the thing.
And that totally happened.
It changed our lives. But at the time, and at the end of 2019, we said, you know what, these 10-minute episodes, yeah, there's something to this. Let's pitch what we have, this really beautiful short, and we can indeed make a short form series for Quibi. Actually, our director-writer, Brian, knew someone who was a producer and did mostly science documentaries and also really great activist pieces, but she wants to get into the scripted space. So she said, you know what, I'll take a meeting. You made the first one. It's gorgeous. Let me hear your story. Go ahead and pitch it to me. So he brought me along as the lead actress, and then someone who was also helping him break what a season would look like, since this would be clearly female driven.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat in the meeting, and she said, I love this. How much? One of those moments that never happens. I love this. How much? And he quoted, and she said, yeah, done. I'll send you the first half of the money.
So that was your first angel investor.
First meeting, first angel investor. By the grace of God, that happened, because we know that doesn't normally happen. We know we were fully prepared to go to some places.
But how did you foster that relationship in the first place to even get to that point? And I think that's the interesting point for people out there who want to learn from that experience.
Absolutely. Relationships. Our writer and director's case, Brian, he worked for a company that was aerospace. And this producer, our angel investor, also worked for that company in a different department, but word got around that there's these two people that are dabbling in Hollywood on the side, and people said, you guys should talk. If you're dabbling in Hollywood on the side, you should know each other. So they met each other and said, yeah, we should talk, because Sandra, our executive producer and angel investor, said, I'm going to be retiring in the next couple of years, and I'm going to be a full-time producer in Hollywood. I already have a space in unscripted, and I really want to get into scripted. So Brian called her and said, could we have this meeting? And she said, absolutely. I'm interested in scripted. Let's do it. So that's how that happened.
So relationships, but also being at the right place at the right time, which is also about all the things that you are putting out there and putting yourself out there. How then did you end up meeting Kelly?
So now, having the money and ready to go with a full-on production, Kathleen, Brian, and myself knew some things, but we didn't know a lot. And really how to make a full television series. I had just worked on a feature film called Bloodborne. And Bloodborne was produced by a company named Epic Level Entertainment. And as an actor that does the research, I looked up Epic Level and saw that they had a website that said, hey, we help creators create. So we can be hired to help you through any part of the process or the entire process. Let us know. So when we wrapped the film that I was working on, again, my instinct as an actor was just to go home, go underneath my weighted blanket and sleep. But I thought, no, I need to network with these people because there it is. They say, come to us. We'd love to help for a fee, but we'd love to help. So mustered up the energy, drank a couple extra Diet Cokes, and went to the wrap party and specifically talked to the producers about their company and what they do. And they said, wonderful, great. Here's our phone numbers. Actually, you already have our numbers. Give us a call and we'll chat. Waited a couple days, gave them a call and pitched Phoenix, the 10 by 10 Quibi series to them. But you're going to need a dynamite line producer and somebody that can really help you get those permits, especially if you're shooting in Los Angeles. Permits, and allocate a huge part of that budget you got from your angel investor to permits. So she recommended, I have a really great line producer. Her name's Kelly Faltis. I'll make the introduction with your permission. We said, absolutely. Our director and writer Brian started meeting with Kelly and really started planning to produce 8 more episodes. We had 1 and 2 at that time, 10 minutes each, that would eventually become the first pilot. But at that time, we had the plan to do 8 more episodes. So that's how we met Kelly.
Great. And Kelly, what is the story on your side?
I became acquainted with Epic Level actually through a project called Like Dogs that I produced and production managed. And she came to me, this was during lockdown. I'm kind of doing nothing like a lot of people.
Right.
And I get this phone call, the person who runs Epic Level. She said, I have Laurine Price, here's her name, and she has this project, and I would love to do it myself, and I can't, but I really think you should consider it and talk to them. Of course, I said yes. I was very excited to get out of the house, but it was also kind of daunting to think, okay, I've come from pre-production and the production side, and now, and never during a pandemic, and now we're going to produce this at the end of 2020. And so I had there was a huge learning curve there to try and keep everyone safe and happy and keep the production going. So that was a big responsibility. Fortunately, we did that. Also, I should say, on Like Dogs, the project that got me connected with Epic Level, that was the first one where I moved, instead of pre-production and production, where I started to get more understanding of distribution. Epic Level walked me through some of those steps and all the many, many deliverables and understanding what those are. But I also didn't have, at that point, a connection with actually selling Like Dogs. They handled that. They had the sales agent. So that side was still new to me going into Phoenix TV series.
Now, there's an interesting point now, because you're brought on board right at the start of the pandemic. That's exactly around the same time that Quibi was launched.
Right.
And then this whole project is being technically produced for Quibi, but then you hear of early news that might go bust. What was the next steps then?
So the good news was we had no contract with Quibi. Our angel investor, having quite a bit of success in the science doc space, coming from aerospace, met a lot of people at a lot of parties, that networking thing, and knew the folks, and was very confident with her relationships there that she could take it there. But she said, also, if we don't land there, they're going to tell me where to go, that this will be profitable. So there was nothing signed.
But it sounded like she had a direct relationship with Jeff Katzenberg, right?
Yeah, she's like, I know. They had a mutual dear friend. So she's like, I'm very confident. And she said, and if for some reason that doesn't work, they're going to tell us where else to go in short form, because they are the short form kings. So it's going to land somewhere. It's going to be profitable. So we're like, cool. Well, it wasn't cool. So pandemic, Quibi was starting to say we're losing millions to possibly all of our money. And we get a call from our angel investors saying, you know what, guys, I know I've written you the check for the first half. We might just have to take this as a write-off because pandemic is happening. Things are going under. This really sucks. But it just is what it is. And we thought about it. And we said, wait a minute. We were already going to have a difficult time shooting only 10 minutes for 10 episodes because there's so much content. By then, we were writing. We had these fully fleshed out characters. We had talked to several actors, part of the Television Academy as well. So I know a lot of actors that are just excited to work. And that's another thing as producers. It's always amazing when you talk to named people. There's this thought that you might never get somebody that is recognizable, but all you have to do is ask. They might say no, but you'd be surprised at how many named actors are like, that sounds awesome. Yeah, send me the script. So we had a number of people that were like, I love this idea. If you guys think you can shoot it safely, I'm there. So we went back to Sandra and we said, you know what, we already have too much material for that original 10 by 10. The first 2 episodes that were shot are already over time. So what if we smoosh the first 2 episodes to be one big pilot at 23 minutes? And what if we shoot 8 by 30, kind of a weird format for our genre, which is thriller suspense. But with streaming, with this pandemic, people are watching anything and everything. And Sandra said, I like that. If you can do it safely, yes, deliver to me the first half. So if it's now 8 episodes, deliver to me your first 4, and then I'll send you the rest of the money. So away we go with Kelly. And by then, and Kelly can speak more to this, most locations were shut down during the pandemic. But Kelly calls and they're happy. I'm putting words in their mouth, but I know they're happy to have somebody come shoot and make a tiny bit of money versus being completely dark. But that's kind of how we pivoted from 10 by 10 to let's think about this in a different way now that the environment has changed.
I have a question for you, Kelly. Like, how hard was it to produce this series, considering the constraints of the pandemic and perhaps the budget?
Sure, it was definitely a team effort with Laurine on this, and other people we had on our crew, of course. But it was a very big challenge because at that time, a lot of the rules were changing. I had to study what the unions had put out as being kind of the safest path, and also to get approvals from them. Things had changed. For example, with the location, before you never had to really submit those to get your SAG approval. And so those were all new things. So we were operating quickly, had to have our locations all set up in advance, because then you have to send maps of where you're staging everything, the PPE, the COVID testing station, all those things you had to know earlier on, that was something new. And it takes time. For example, with cast, let's just say something happens, someone can't come in, you have to have a replacement. Well, no, you can't have a replacement because you need to get people COVID tested. Yeah, we definitely had to learn all of that very quickly. But we did manage to keep our set COVID free.
It's funny because here we are, like, a few years later, or at least 1 year later, and we're still talking about COVID. But what's interesting for me is that not only did you have to do something from scratch that was self-financed, but then you also had to deal with this additional challenge that was probably more expensive. I do want to quickly switch back to talent again. There's a really great cast there, and that's the thing that really stuck out for me in general, and why I invited you on this series is that, yes, the cinematography looks amazing and the acting is amazing, and you don't always see that with independently produced productions.
Many of the primary roles were people that I had known, and that was through living here in Los Angeles, going to events, drinking my Diet Coke, and making sure to say, hi, I'm Laurine. But also, I will say I did work when I first moved here as a junior agent to a London office. Also, through being a junior agent, met a lot of people. And even though eventually as an actor, I knew I had to step away from the agent role, I kept those relationships. Fast forward to projects, actors will always say, hey, if you hear of anything, keep me in mind. They'll always say that. Kathleen Kinmont was there. She read the script and was like, sign me up. Where do I sign? Like, she didn't even want to talk about it. She's like, I love this. I love this strong female role. How do I a part of this? Other things I have, being part of Lambda and now an alum of the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, there's a great alumni network. There's a lot of names and they all come to these alumni events. So we all talk to one another, one of which is Ricco Ross. He's been in so many genre pieces. And so, the director, and then Adria, who's actually from Epic Level Entertainment too, or she's connected with them, Adria, our casting director. But also, you'd be surprised again, when you put out on the actors' breakdowns, these roles, who submits? Jim Hanks, Tom Hanks's brother, was like, I would love a role in this. Dominic Keating from Star Trek, who happens to know Garrett Want, is like, I love this role. It's so out of the box of what I always play. Please consider me. Our production team, knowing all this genre work, was like, holy crap, these people want to work. Also, it's COVID-19. So when they're like, you have a production going on during COVID with these fascinating characters, please consider me. So it was a great combination of who we knew and then also just putting it out there and people saying, I want to work.
So there's a great tip that I'm hearing here based on what you just said, Laurine. And it's not only like luck doesn't happen by chance. Luck happens by doing other things, by putting ourselves out there. So the fact that you were an agent before, the fact that you've been an actress, the fact that you had this business degree, all lent itself really well. And I think that's important for people to hear out there, because that's an important lesson, right? It's like, don't just focus on one thing, just kind of keep things open-minded and keep moving forward. And that's how luck ultimately happens. So let's move on to our third topic, which again, I think is going to intrigue people even more. I think this episode is getting better and better. We are going to learn about your learnings. And now you've produced this series, and now it's time to go out to the international markets. And that's how I met you guys. So why don't you tell me about that process?
Sure, that's a great question. And I started actually with madly researching online, what could I find? And it's very hard to find. You can find all kinds of advice on pre-production and production, but it's hard to find really good advice on selling a TV series specifically. And I found you, and I found.
Which is funny because you didn't remember that when we actually met.
No, and I didn't know that. I didn't. I found the podcast. I thought, oh, this is so interesting about film markets versus film festivals, and that's what we were kind of thinking. Well, do we go to film festivals? How do we do this?
Yeah.
Then that's what clued me in about markets for television. And then I also was working on a different feature as a production manager, talked to an actor who actually ended up being a producer as well. And he actually came up to me because I was thinking and, praying like, well, geez, should I recommend this to Brian and Laurine to spend money to go to a market? And that very day, this actor came up to me at lunch and was saying how he produces things and he likes to go to markets and it's really important. He goes, I think you should go to MIPCOM. So he confirmed what you said in your podcast. And so now I'm thinking, okay, this is the plan. We're going. And so I told Laurine and so, that kind of set us off on this. And then we heard, oh, you're supposed to set up meetings in advance. Well, we tried doing that and it's very hard to get the attention of just sending cold emails without having some kind of relationship.
So we found out about this a little bit late. So we were about 3 weeks out from MIPCOM.
Right.
And this year it was extremely busy, I think, because a lot of people were coming back. So it is true that, one should start 2 months in advance in an ideal scenario.
And I can't believe that I think we met you our first night there.
Yeah.
But I had no clue that that you were the face of the podcast that kind of started us on this.
On this path. That's cool. And here's the other kind of joke, I guess, in a sense. It's like I have this consulting friend of mine, Sandra Lenner, who was on my podcast in season 2, and we're accountability partners now. And there was this joke that I noticed that we had 2 different schedules at the market. She was doing lots of networking in the evenings and going to all the parties and the cocktail events. I was going there for a client, so I was booking as many meetings as possible during the day. So I jokingly said at some point, where you're the nighttime networker and you're the daytime networker. But at the end of the day, especially when you're new, that nighttime networking is essential, because that's how you're going to meet people by hapstance. That's how we ended up meeting. at the end of the day. Tell me more about what you learned about those cocktail events and maybe the do's and don'ts. Did you make any mistakes?
Of course, no mistakes. Got it right in the first time. But no, one thing I think that surprised us a little bit, one, it was a big surprise about, going from morning all the way to night and the amount of energy that takes out of you when you're kind of in conference mode and we're trying to we had lists of who we wanted to try and contact or reach out to and just kind of staying on top of that. And then also now, okay, party mode to try and make new friends and make connections that way. And I think one thing too, coming from LA and having no clue and just hearing that, there are red carpets. So I know we both brought outfits to dress to the nines, and I was a little surprised that others didn't as much. But I think it ended up working as an advantage for us because we ended up getting VIP bracelets into places that they're like, oh, they must be, because we were dressed nice. They're like, they must be someone. So here's your VIP bracelet. And we ended up
That's hilarious.
It's true.
So that's a good tip. Just show up like, you're dressed for a huge red carpet event. But
but taking it seriously, taking it seriously and dressing the role, if you will,
Yeah, that's funny because I remember my first markets, I would bring like an extra suit bag and I would have a couple suits, and even sometimes just for fun, even though nobody does it, I would wear a tie.
But it's funny you say it because we would come and I had this huge garment bag I took on the plane. Kelly and I dressed up, and suddenly I didn't know what was happening. Kelly was more aware. A bracelet was put on us. We're ushered in the VIP room. Kelly is also very good about just going up to people saying, "Hi, I'm Kelly. This is Laurine. We have a television series." What happened in several of the VIP rooms? They're like, "That's really cool. Tell me about it." We had our pitch memorized, said it, and he would give us their card, and then he'd walk away. And I was like, "Okay, Kelly, who is that?" He's like, and she would say, "That was the CEO of this distribution company in this area." I was like, "Oh, oh God." So yeah.
Was there too much of a pitch sometimes or not enough?
I know Kelly's experience is different. I'll just say as the night got later, people wanted less. So people would ask you, "What is your pitch?" But if it's 2 a.m., ours is a woman survives her plane crash, has amnesia, thinks she's an assassin. Done. But if it's earlier in the day, talk about it, give the 30 to 45-second pitch and get into the biomed aspect, the sex trafficking element, the corporate espionage, get into that earlier in the day.
And Laurine's right on that. As people got either more tired or consume more alcohol, whatever it was, that you had to kind of shorten it. But also it's a little bit of, I think Laurine and I realized that's where we really forged our team as kind of going to the markets and doing this. I think we really it became an art form and who would say what, and we ended up realizing that we work really well together. Yeah. So I would be the person who would maybe go up or introduce us, and then Laurine would just know what to say. So
the creative side. But
yeah.
Kelly, she's underselling herself. She had her sparkly glasses production. Right. She actually has sparkly glasses. As people asked her about that, they wanted to know about her producer's journey, which would also get at the meetings, was the producer's journey.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's another good tip, is having a little something that stands out, that's a conversation opener. And so these sparkly glasses that a wonderful costume designer, Shantae, gave me on another show, that's what formed the idea for my production company, Sparkly Glasses Films. And then, so I have sparkly glasses that I wear, and they're just for fun.
But they grab attention.
And so at our last night, someone said, this woman goes, "Oh, I love your glasses." And so we start talking, and then I said, "Oh yeah, well, we have this TV series." And, "Oh, okay, well, I'm a distributor. Here's my card. Send me more information." "Oh, okay." So it's amazing. Like, I had no idea that would open things up.
And that woman got her whole team. Her woman's like, "Hey," called a so-and-so. "Hey, so-and-so." Then suddenly 4 women are all looking at Kelly's sparkly glasses. And they're like, "You are awesome. Where can we get this from?" And it just stirred this whole conversation then about being producers and being fun at parties. And they formed a kinship there, which goes miles, as far as then getting an offer, So
how did you read the room though? Like, What are your learnings from that?
This is me at parties. I'm in my phone because I'm an actor and I don't have a script. But Kelly, I just follow Kelly around. So Kelly, what's your barometer?
I don't know. Maybe I have to credit my mom or dad on this. Just maybe learning from them. My mom is so good at being outgoing and talking to people. And I think watching her in action is something that just I absorbed and didn't realize it. And then it really kind of came into play when we were at the market. So for me, it actually was a growth and learning experience saying, oh, wow, I can do this. This is something I'm enjoying a lot. So it's something I took note of and I thought, okay, let's just keep doing it, do more of it. It seems to be working. So, and go with who you are too. Don't try to, that's, it's standard advice, but it really helps. It helps me if I get nervous or something about just, hey, just let your light shine, so to speak, and then see how things go. And if you do sense that someone's kind of not interested, then maybe don't force it, but it does help to at least try and get a business card and get to that point, or find something little or something silly to connect on and to kind of open that conversation. And then you can say, oh, well, we're here because we have the series.
Exactly. I think what I really like about this whole conversation is that there are different styles, just like you said, and people are different and they'll approach it differently. And when I teach my workshops, I also teach people to just be mindful of the whole scenario, that perhaps at cocktail parties, it's not the right place to pitch. Like you mentioned, like at 2 a.m., we kind of noticed that people weren't interested. So there's two things. It's number one is learn to ask questions about who's in front of you. Because, for example, if the person tells you that they work in the dubbing industry and they're in charge of localization, you're not going to go launch into your pitch. On the other hand, you have your 30-second, like you said, 30 to 45-second elevator pitch ready so that you can introduce your show, but then you kind of need a little bit of an invitation to pitch more.
Yeah.
And what I often say to people is that, especially if you're a market and it's a Sunday night in our case, or a Monday night the following night, then there's always an opportunity to say, hey, do you have any availabilities? Can we follow up this conversation this week if you see that there's a click? That way, you're not going too far with that person in that moment. You've made a good first impression. You've exchanged cards, but then you can actually have a really solid half hour with that person, perhaps the next day. So that's a good way for newcomers, I find. Yeah. So I think that's great because you guys are basically figuring out all of this through instinct and through experience.
It's true. One other thing, find out who the connector is at the party, because there's some people that really have the gift of connection. At MIPCOM, C21 has Odiri Iwuji, who is one of the co-founders of C21. And Odiri loves to meet everybody. He loves to know your 10 to 15 second, why are you here? And then he loves to take your hand, Kelly's in my hand, and bring us over to distributors and say, this is a distributor from this area. Laurine and Kelly have a series. You guys should talk. Here, ladies, let's go over here. So if you find that connector, so I would also recommend being light on the alcohol, stick to your or whatever that is, and watching who are the connectors, who actually are looking to meet the people and make those connections. And then I also wanted to thank C21 and Odiri, because Odiri said, you guys are here at MIPCOM for the first time. Can I write a press release on you guys and put it on the C21 website that's going to go out to 30,000 people or whatever tomorrow? And Kelly and I are like, yes, please. So, but those parties will often have somebody that's the busy bee that goes around and wants to know everybody. So finding that person
and helping you being introduced to other people.
They introduce you, exactly, because they want to know every single person. They want to make sure that everybody knows everybody and has a great time.
And that too is based on that instinct and reading the room and finding out, who can help you in a given scenario.
One other point on that, and that helps to then, when you are following up after meeting someone, instead of trying to figure out what to put in the subject line of the email so that you're not ignored and passed over, and that maybe that connection does turn into something good, it helps to then try and reference whatever that neat thing is, like how you met, to kind of throw a little bit of that in there. So it's not just a kind of really boring same old, something that'll grab their attention again. and remind them of how you met and how you connected, so that hopefully they won't delete that email and want to still continue to talk to you. So
That's a great tip. Well, I think we're out of time at this stage. This has been a really great podcast episode to learn about your journey, how Phoenix came to be in the first place, how it shifted because of the circumstances, and how the two of you met and ultimately went together and went to the markets. And now in 2023, you're going to be completing this series and launching it for the world. So I wish you guys much success with Phoenix. And as soon as it's ready, I'll make sure to add some links into the description so that people can find out how to watch it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. It was awesome to meet you, and it's awesome to be on this podcast. So thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Take care. This has been the Global VID podcast. Thanks to my guests, Laurine Price and Kelly Faltis of the Phoenix TV series, show editor Nicole Almeida, and theme song composers Amber Goodwin and Aaron Ross. To support our show, please subscribe and share with a friend. Thanks for listening.